Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Superman and Lois. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I love that tense opening sequence because, Bizarro Jonathan found his way to Jonathan, and it was this clutch moment where it's like, is Clark going to get there in time before they fuse? And luckily he does and separates them. But Bizarro Jonathan takes off because he's like, right, no matter what you do, you can't stop what's coming. And he bounces. So now Clark is filling everyone in about the Bizarro world and everything he experienced. Now it's like, right, Allie, what she's going to become. Which, that becomes a conversation of, now that she has fused with both sides have fused together, is she going to have the power of a god? That also means she's potentially stronger than Superman. And if all these other people from the other side, from the Bizarro world, fuse with their counterparts, their mirror counterparts, they're going to become stronger than Superman. So you're going to have the person who is literally the strongest being on this planet will have to face an army of people. Because, I think even the Kryptonians were never as strong as Clark. I think maybe the argument could be because they were just subconsciouses implanted in those bodies. They weren't quite... They could still... But, I mean, those are still Kryptonian levels. And I think maybe Clark, with his experience and stuff like that, still outranks them. But these are beings that would end up being more powerful than him if, everyone fused with their mirror counterparts. So... But Clark is like, right, no matter what's going on between you and me, Jonathan, let's put that aside and let's work, I'm going to protect you. You are my son and I love you. Because I was hoping that Clark and him would kind of repair things after he got back. And seeing how messed up everything was, how Bizarro Jonathan and Bizarro Superman, how their relationship was, I figured that would push Clark to try and repair it, which... He tries his best, but this family's juggling so much all at once that it's hard to kind of keep up. So... Because everyone's dealing with their respective things. Jonathan's dealing with the fact is there's a Bizarro me going out there. Jordan's dealing with, hey, there's a whole thing between him and Sarah, and he's trying to text her, but she's not replying to him. Which that's interesting to me. Because Sarah kind of got mad at him later on. It's like, well, you did kind of ignore most of his text. And so it's like, right, now that I'm texting him back, he's kind of ghosting me now. But obviously her and Lana start kind of comparing notes. And oh, it's weird. Yeah, because she had actually Lana ran into Clark, but Clark had kind of brushed her off. He'd been going for a month. And for Clark, he didn't realize that at the time because he's like, right, it only been a day. So it's like, right. So... That place is like some hyperbolic time, I guess it makes sense, we're going through a portal to another world, so there's going to be some, because that's always been the conversation I've had about the multiverse. For example, when Barry goes from one Earth to the other, are the time frames the exact same? So if it's, for example, March 3rd, 12:40 something at a.m., well, it's March 4th, 12:40 something a.m., on Earth 1, is it that exact date and time on Earth 2? Or is it just, would that work, or would it be different? I think there's conversations that have come up that would say that would be different. At least between both of these worlds, the time frame is massively different, because Clark was going a day, and here it's been a month. So once again, very much some hyperbolic time chamber stuff. But regardless, he missed out on so much. Lana winning the election and becoming the mayor, which Clark was so happy about, but now it's oh man, my best friend, she was reaching out to me, because Clark has always been that shoulder she can lean on, they have their long history, and so with everything that she's going through right now, having Clark's support would have meant a lot, and she hasn't seen or heard from him, and it almost seemed like he was trying, too busy to deal, and it sucks because Clark's once again, the juggling of everything, and it's just moments like this where it's right, the dual identity thing comes with its complication. A lot of times you can navigate it, but when you're dealing with a circumstance of you were going for over a month, and then also it turns out, oh, hey, you've got your Bizarro version of your son roaming around, potentially causing trouble. So, and I love that this leads to a conversation with Jonathan, where Jonathan's saying, Clark is so focused on protecting his secret identity. It's right, you could have captured Bizarro John then, but you didn't because you were too busy trying to protect, which I think is shut your mouth. Because the whole conversation comes up about lying, how Jonathan didn't say anything about Candace. Once again, his dad, he is right. His dad and mom aren't really listening to him. If they would listen I think Jonathan still went about it the wrong way, but they could understand. No, she might have done something bad, but she did it for altruistic reasons. She was trying to make money for her family. And if I sent her to jail, like if I ratted them out, she would have gotten in severe trouble. Like that would have meant like they would have lost income. And if Clark heard that, I do believe he would have. But it's also Jordan didn't come to them first and foremost. Like, can we do anything to help out this family? I think the end result will get there, but they're gonna bump heads because Jonathan is right. Clark is so stuck in his own way. He is the Boy Scout. So he's like, no, you did something wrong. If Candace did something wrong, she deserves it. It's like, okay, so you're getting on me about lying, but what about you? You lied to me my entire life. It's like, it's not the same, isn't it? It's like, it's apples and oranges, you little rapscallion. I was about to say, you little punk. It's like, it's once again, you're just like, ooh, teenagers. You want to punch them in their little faces. Because it's that thing of like, you ungrateful. I know because I was that snot-nosed brat at one point in time. It's like, don't talk to your parents like that, you little shit. It's that type of energy. You're just like, oh, like old man me as a 29-year-old. I'm just like, oh God, teenagers suck. But because I get where Jonathan's coming from, but it's also like, right, it feels like they aren't really looking at Clark's perspective on it. But I guess it's also like, right, things are different. You, like, that was just you alone. Like, the situation is different because we are a family unit. We are in this together. So it is a different circumstances. Whereas before, like, Clark, yes, he had the whole Jonathan and Martha situation, his parents, and everything. It was to protect Lois because if people found out he was Superman. I mean, and it's interesting timing, spoilers, to anyone that hasn't never saw the final season of Supergirl. Kara announced who she was to the world. She was like, yeah, I'm Kara Danvers and I'm Supergirl. She no longer, like, dual-wielded her identities. And I'm curious because, once again, this is a Superman that's been active for years, over decades. Like, he's been active just as Superman alone. So it's not, it wouldn't be too much of a stretch if he tried to attempt that in this, continuity. I mean, once again, it's its own thing. So, so I wonder, has it ever come up? I'm sure, I don't know if his identity has ever been publicly known to the world. Because the title of this episode is Truth and Consequences. And I think that's going to be an interesting theme going forward for the rest of the season, because it's like, right, if you never know the domino effects of telling the truth and not telling the truth, because Jordan's in a complicated space because, right, he was never able to tell Sarah, like, right, I'm keeping this secret. He's wanted to tell Sarah for a long time about his powers, but he hasn't, and that led to the complications where she feels like he doesn't see her as something important, but he's like, right, she is, but he's juggling so much and he can never be open. Sarah can open, and that's always going to be a complication with a relationship when one person is kind of giving it their all and pouring everything out, being like, right, this is all of me. Because Sarah's, opens up to him about a lot of stuff, and he kind of keeps a lot of stuff bottled because he can't tell her for his family's sake and stuff. So, which, like I said, kind of goes back to like the whole Lana and Sarah conversation I was talking about earlier, where Lana was like, yeah, Clark always did seem like, even when he was there, like he wasn't there. Like, Lana had picked up on that, like, over the years that they knew each other, but she could never quite scratch it. And even Sarah's like, oh yeah, it's interesting, like father, like son, I guess, where it's like, yeah, those parallels are coming through. Because the way he talked about it, I don't know who he was referencing. He said his father, but I don't remember if he said Jor-El or whether he referencing Jonathan, or was it both of his fathers, where he was saying that he was told to keep this secret. So he's applying how he was raised with this whole superhero thing, Superman situation, and he just applied it to the rest of his family, and that. But once again, the dynamic isn't quite what it was before, and things are different, especially with the threat that they're dealing with, where we're dealing with doppelgangers from another world, which could put everyone you care about in danger when you're not willing to act because you're so busy trying to protect your own identity. But, like, it's also, like, right, by protecting your identity, you're protecting the people you're closest to. Like, it's a double-edged sword. Like, there's always going to be fallout and repercussions and complications on either front. Telling the truth or not telling the truth. Like, there's always going to be some double-edged sword to it. So, But I thought it was such an interesting argument. But once again, I'm still more on Clark's side of things, and Lois too. But I'm also just like, because I just, Jonathan coming at it with such attitude is what bothers me so much. But also at the same time, he's been like lamenting and sitting on this for a month. For his dad, it's only been a day. Like, so where they still stood, it's been a day. Whereas like Jonathan's had to sit on this for like 33 days. So it's understandable why they would be at different emotional levels to some extent with all of this. And why, like, things would kind of spark the way they have, so. But Jonathan kidnapping Lois like that, once again, is proof of, right, if you told her the truth, you could have taken Bizarro Jonathan out before he got to Lois, before he got to Lana, or even then, Lana would have been aware to be like, wait, that they would have been more on edge because they would have known the truth of like, right, that's not Jonathan. They wouldn't have gotten blindsided by the whole situation, so. And Clark was just upset because, like, I don't care what your deal. You can be mad at me all you want right now. What's most important right now, and I thought was sweet, is like, I got my best friend is in trouble. I'm like, I love that. That's so sweet that it's like, yeah. I mean, I think that speaks volumes about their friendship, that they could go from, I mean, they dated in high school, but the fact is that they can be best friends. I mean, I say that as someone like, I've never, my attempts to have friendships with my exes have never worked out in my, not saying it can't, it just hasn't. I've heard instances of people who have, and I like that Clark and Lana do have that relationship and that dynamic, that they are so close, but Jonathan's trying to bring over the other Lana to fuse with this Lana, and he brings Clark into a trap, sets off a bomb, knowing that Clark will try and protect her from it, but in the process, kryptonite comes flying and stabs him, and it's just like, I even love that he has a very dissociative nature to it, where he's like, those people, Lois and Clark, they're not my parents, they just look like them, especially because he knows his dad's dead. So I think that makes him dissociate even more so when it comes to him looking at Clark/Superman, so, and stabbing that giant chunk into his chest, and I was like, oh damn. And I was almost wondering in that moment whether or not Lois was going to, I keep doing it, Lana was going to know. So Lana's picking out the pieces of kryptonite in his chest, or he's going off to go get Jonathan. But in that moment, Jordan steps up. And despite kind of being like a little bit of back and forth, but Jonathan has, I think, a lot more training and experience maybe. But he is just the stronger one. I think naturally, powers aside, I think Jonathan was always probably like, he was a more athletic one before Jordan got his abilities. So Jonathan always, I guess, had the edge, and you add into that superpowers. But the problem is, all Jordan had to do was wait, given the opportunity, because Jonathan is so wrapped up in the fight, he doesn't realize you're underneath the yellow sun, and as the time is going on, you're losing your power. And that moment, I was like, I'm glad Clark didn't get there in that moment, because I'm glad that Jordan got to have that moment. I love that this is his moment, his rise to Superboy. It's slowly but steadily there. So, which is funny considering like his brother, like the Bizarro version of his brother, got to Superboy status before he did. So I think that's kind of interesting. But him grabbing Jonathan's and then like laying into him and then kneeing him into the sky and then jettisoning after him, because he's not flying, he just pushed off so hard. Which once again, that's always an interesting conversation about how Superman flies, and he's not really flying, it's just that he's almost borderline gliding. It's how some stuff will, because isn't that how, and I think I made this conversation before, like, isn't that how, I think it's just straight up flying in this, but I want to say, isn't some continuities, I want to even say Man of Steel, wasn't it more so like, because like the gravity on Earth is so low that he jettisons himself off of it, it looks like he's flying, but truth be told is, he's just kind of gliding against, the wind and stuff like that. I could be like totally full of shit on that, but that's always my thing, because I think in that moment either Jordan did fly, but I think it's just he pushed off so hard that it's almost like he was flying and taking Jonathan higher in the air. I wonder if like getting that closer to the sun to some extent was draining his power more, but like your boy laying into him, bam, bam, and then punches him far away. But the problem is he doesn't know how to fly, so he's falling. And luckily Clark catches both of them. But I'm like, yeah. I like that Jordan, like I said, this has been Jordan's moment this season to really like step up as Superboy. And he lays Bizarro Jonathan out. I'm like, this is for my brother. Bam! So I thought that was pretty dope. I was actually scared because when Clark left Lana alone, I'm like, this is going to backfire. But I'm like, well, the other Lana, she had already gone back, which we'll get to that in a second. But even if she hadn't, she couldn't do anything with that Lana because Jonathan had the necklace because he needed to get the opportunity to fuse with his counterpart. So, but circling to all of that, trying to help mitigate the visions and stuff, because as long as they're connected, being here on the same earth, same world, that Jonathan will always be linked in that regard to his Bizarro counterpart, just like Clark was. And it's like, right, he'll know exactly where I am at all times, so he'll always know where to come and strike. So John Henry's working on a device to try and block that, but it's not working. They'll need a lot more power, so they needed the K kryptonite. And Natalie did point out something that was interesting, because John referenced the that in-between point between this world and the Bizarro world, that, as they refer to it, as a negative zone, which I'm like, would that have any correlation to do with the negative spirit that is in Larry and Doom Patrol? There's some correlation there. Whatever the case may be, because I thought it was interesting that they made a point that Clark stopped there because there was like a buffer zone between both worlds, and then he continued and made it to the Bizarro world. So I thought that was interesting. And Natalie points out it's kind of similar to where she was stuck when she was tracking her father's suit. But that Lana situation got really bad. I thought that was kind of interesting. I wonder if that weapon that John fired, because I was wondering at first, was it K kryptonite? Because he had absorbed K kryptonite, right? So, because later on, Natalie stabbed her with it, and it seemed like that did some damage. So that's why I'm like, did that convert the K kryptonite into like red sun energy or something like that? Because he's probably equipped to like deal with a Kryptonian from this world, but that world they feed off of red solar energy. So whatever he zapped her with, it actually healed her but whatever Natalie did, which she just stabbed her with a piece of X kryptonite. So, which kind of makes sense, and to some extent. So that's why I'm wondering, like, that must have just been a different weapon, and it fires red solar energy. So they feed off of that. But yellow kryptonite, it gives abilities in this world, as we can see with what it does. So I guess to some extent, maybe it would be the equivalency of, whereas green kryptonite would make them stronger, yellow kryptonite will weaken them. Whereas green kryptonite weakens Kryptonians of this world, whereas yellow kryptonite could be, obviously it was part of the Kryptonian consciousness process from last season, but... What's going to be interesting, though, is when eventually Lana comes to this world, and it's like, right, like there's her Talro from the other world, and then there's this Talro, which both of them are having a somewhat positive relationship with Clark, because Bizarro Talro has already lost his brother, didn't want to make a mistake again. This Talro, I'm curious how he's going to feel when he's like, oh, here's my counterpart, and also here's the significant other to my counterpart, but also my significant other's counterpart also, like, her counterpart exists on this world. So it's like, are we going to set up a like Talro? I was like, no, because she already had her interaction with Morgan Edge, which she doesn't know that's, I don't know if that would mean like, because once again, like, people don't know, they still don't know, it's not publicly known that Talro and Superman are siblings. I think that's only known in the military. I think, I could be misremembering. I think they kept that tight knit because that was one of those points of contention where Chrissy was like, right, you're not telling me everything, Lois. So, but nevertheless, luckily that John Henry situation was pretty bad, and it's also like, right, let's never leave home without the hammer again. And so John is saying like, right, I need to do whatever it takes to protect you. You're my daughter. But for Natalie, it's like, no, we're a family. Like, you look after me, but I'm also going to look after you. Like, we always look after each other. They're the only family they've gotten left. And so Natalie's working on a project, and I think she's going to apply the X kryptonite, which you have John Henry Imes thinking of a plan to close the portal. Because as I read it, as long as the portal is closed, like, no one else can come through, so it can limit, what they can do. Or he's going to do something with it. He has an idea, but he didn't really explain it. Some other elements I really enjoyed was Clark or Superman dropping Lana off. And for an instant, I was like the way Lana was like, "Oh, do you want to come inside?" And I was like, "Well, she's not. She's going through a divorce right now." And I'm like, "She is, pretty much single." And I was like, "Is there kind of like is she kind of like saying like, oh, you want to come inside, Superman? I mean, you saved my life and everything." I was like, "Oh, that's a little weird if you think about it." So I was wondering, but Clark was like, no. But because Lana would say like, "Right, I can't tell anyone. I understand it," because she was like, "Oh, thank goodness," because I thought I'd be worried about finding out that, oh, that Jonathan isn't really Jonathan. She's like, "Oh, thank God. I didn't know what I was going to tell Lois and Clark." And she's like, "I get it. I understand. I have to keep quiet about it." He's like, "I can't ask you to lie for me because it's already bad enough." He's like, "I got to do it. I've got my family to do it. I can't ask my best friend to do it too." But for Lana, it's like, no, it's not just about me. It's about the kids, like the reality of all of this. Like just like Clark is trying to protect them to have, for one, it is, yes, you can make the argument, it is a selfish thing because I think some people can have that hot take of, isn't it kind of selfish that Superman, anytime he's spending time as Clark and not out there saving the world all the time, isn't that kind of selfish? But everyone deserves to have that human life. Like, firefighters and police officers are able to clock out. You're like, why can't Superman, So, but I've heard that argument of like, and it's not necessarily an argument, but it was an interesting take. I heard someone say like, right, that some people have that perspective of like, yeah, I don't know how many people have that perspective, but as a perspective I heard of like, yeah, isn't he kind of selfish not being Superman all the time? It's like, that's not the most balanced life, and that can cause issues. I mean, look at the Bizarro versions of them, like how that turned him once again into literally Homelander. Granted, not the sociopath that Homelander was, but that fame and everything kind of got to you, not having that grounded aspect to your life, because their normal lives for Clark is like, that's how we survive, that's how we make it, that's why we're a better off situation. But Lois is like, we're not them, because the difference is we have two extraordinary kids, and those two extraordinary kids have two extraordinary parents raising them. So, but it's like, because for Clark it's like, right, what if me telling the truth ends up snowballing and leads our family to being that at some point, So I thought that was interesting. But obviously there's the back and forth, because Jordan had written a letter for Sarah early on in the episode, but she never read it because it's understandable. To be fair, Lois kept being like, this isn't the time for that. I get it. Because it's also the thing of like, you're teenagers, and it's like, right, the girl you're in love with, she kind of thinks you don't care enough about her, but like, no, I want to clear the air. I just have, it's like, right, Lois took your phone, so you couldn't really communicate with her. You wrote this letter like your mom suggested, and look, Sarah didn't want it, because truth be told, it was the worst possible time. Her mom's missing. She's worried about her. She knows something's up. And even Lois is like, man, I feel terrible. I'm lying to her. She's like, it felt gross. The fact is, I'm sitting here lying to her about like, right, I know the truth about what's going on with her mom, but I can't tell her anything, So when I was sitting down later on, it is a conversation of Lois is like, wait, you were going to tell Sarah about your powers and everything? It's like, why didn't you tell me? And it's like, well, you didn't give us an opportunity. She's like, why can't you guys get that I'm on your side? And Jonathan and Jordan are like, why can't you see that we're on your side too? And for Lois, it's just like, I'm sorry. It just feels like, rather than coming together as a family, it feels like we're falling apart. We're spreading apart. And then Jordan's kind of says a line I thought was interesting, where he's like, maybe we're never that close. Because where they are right now is a byproduct, I think, of all the lies. When it's just like, right, when you have to like keep up with so many lies, who you can tell what to. I think that's all kind of contributed to the family. They came together, but it's like, it's slowly been, that lie has been slowly deteriorating this family and causing like, domino effects that have kind of led to where they are. So when the time comes, Clark is like, right, I told Lana the truth about Jonathan as Superman, but he's like, right, I'm thinking I should tell her the truth. I thought Lois was going to say like, because Clark is like, should I tell? And like Jonathan and Jordan are like, absolutely yes, but like Lois was like, absolutely. I thought she was going to say absolutely not, but it's like, no, Lois, because I think she wanted to respect Clark's decision, but it's like, right, it is a decision they should make together as a family. So when he went to go tell Lana, even I was kind of getting a little nervous. I was like, oh my God, are you going to do it? Are you going to do it? And it's like, Lana, like, I'm sorry, but I was there. There's something I wanted to tell you. And it's like, I know what you went through, Lana, because I was there. I was like, oh God, are you going to do it? Are you going to do it? And he floats up and she's just like, and then he freezes a tree. And she's like, you're Superman. I'm like, yo! Which is an interesting thing because I remember hearing, I won't say specifically Hector, because if you don't know, Heroes Reforged, which is Adam, Augustine, and Hector like react to Superman and Lois. And something that Hector said, like in the first episode of the pilot, I thought was interesting. Because typically, I think more often than not, Lois does know about... Not Lois, Lana, sorry. Does know about Clark's circumstances. Even going by Smallville standards, Lana knew. Well, it took a while, but she found out first before Lois did. Because Lois didn't officially find out until... What was it? Borderline... The, like... season 10 premiere, like of the final season, is when she found out, or at least she had some inkling, like season 9's finale or something like that, and she was just wait throughout a good chunk of early season 10. She was waiting for Clark to tell her the truth. That was the whole thing. But Lana still knew, and I think more often than not she typically does. So I think it's interesting that it's the inverse, where it's like now that they're older and past everything, now Clark ends up telling her the truth. Now that's going to be interesting to see how Lana reacts, because it's like, cool. Someone I was dating, so you were lying to me back then when we were dating. You've been lying to me in the time frame when we've been best friends. Like, you've been keeping a massive secret from me. I mean, Lana has a perspective as an adult to probably be like, I get it. It's going to make her feel complicated. So it's going to be like, oh, wow, my best friend Superman. I had no idea. Is that why you were always so weird and like back when we were younger and stuff? I'm sure a lot of those conversations are going to come up, but it's like, wow. Because it's not just Clark that lied to her. Anytime she talked to Lois, it was a lie. Same thing for Jordan and Jonathan. And I'm curious, now they're starting off with Lana. Who else are you going to tell? I would assume you're going to tell other people you're close to. So are you going to... I'm assuming it's like, right, do you want Lana to tell Kyle and Sarah? What about Chrissy? Like, is Lois going to ever have Chrissy know the truth about everything? Because she's still kind of kept in the dark as well. So I'm fascinated to see, what will be the aftermath of all this. Once again, the title of this episode being Truth and Consequences is so fascinating that it's like, right, there's going to be fallout from both telling the truth and not telling the truth. I mean, this episode was fallout from not telling the truth. So what will be the fallout for telling the truth? Because like I said, I think both sides come with a double-edged sword. So it's going to be interesting. We're going to be waiting a little while because Superman and Lois is going on a little bit of a break and won't be coming back until literally the end of the month on May 31st. So kind of bummed we have to wait that long, but like I said, my heart was pounding on whether or not Clark, like I didn't know if like Lana wasn't going to listen to him and she was going to leave before he could say anything, or something bad was going to happen before he could get to her, because she was even like, wait, how'd you even know where I was, that I was here? So it's going to be so fascinating to see what the aftermath of this is going to look like. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.